Beyoncé has no shortage of admirers, but there's one person who's made it clear she's not a fan: Toni. For years, she's hurled all kinds of accusations at Beyoncé, from calling her a demon to labeling her a secret society puppet. Most of the time, these rants come and go like passing storms, but this time, she managed to drag Glorilla into the crossfire, turning one moment of pure excitement at the Grammys into a social media battlefield. It all started when Beyoncé took home a major win in a category that hardly anyone expected her to conquer, let alone be nominated in. While most people were cheering, celebrating, or at least raising an eyebrow at this unexpected achievement, Glorilla was on her feet, practically losing her mind in excitement. Cameras caught every second of it. She was clapping, yelling, and practically shining with joy for a fellow black woman making history. But once that footage hit the internet, Toni didn't hold back. She labeled the entire scene demonic, claimed Beyoncé was influencing others to worship something dark, and insisted that Glorilla's enthusiastic reaction made her look like a groupie under a spell. For those who haven't tracked Toni's history with Beyoncé, it's not the first time she's made dramatic statements. She's often described Beyoncé's performances, especially any that involve being lifted off the ground, as symbolic of evil or secret rituals. Whenever Beyoncé does something visually striking, like floating into the air during a show, Toni sees it as more than just a concert stunt. In her eyes, these moments prove Beyoncé's ties to hidden societies. And if you think she's merely exaggerating for attention, she's stood by these beliefs for years. Things took an even stranger turn when Toni singled out Glorilla. At first, people assumed Toni would just rehash her usual claims about Beyoncé being a puppet or controlling fans. Instead, she zeroed in on Glorilla's reaction at the Grammys, ridiculing her for being over the top. According to Toni, no superstar like Beyoncé would ever go that wild for someone else's success, so seeing Glorilla do it was embarrassing. She even used some unfiltered language to describe Glorilla's appearance, claiming she looked 10 years old and was jumping around like a fool. That harsh commentary immediately set the internet ablaze. Glorilla's clapback came quick. She didn't launch a lengthy rant, nor did she bother addressing Toni point by point. Instead, she made a short but loaded statement on social media, basically telling everyone to call animal control. A single phrase was enough to gather sympathy and support from her fans, many of whom had never even heard of Toni until then. People rallied behind Glorilla, praising her for not letting the negativity escalate. Meanwhile, Toni saw Glorilla's reaction and stayed defiant, letting the world know she had zero regrets about what she'd said. It didn't take long for folks online to split into camps. Some argued that Toni was exposing the truth about Beyoncé and that her mention of dark influences wasn't far-fetched. They pointed to the way fans treat Beyoncé almost like a deity, buying out entire concerts in seconds, memorizing every dance move, and defending her from any criticism whatsoever. In their view, Toni was simply calling attention to what they see as celebrity worship gone too far. Others found the entire situation bizarre and even comical. They labeled Toni's rants as nothing more than attention-seeking theatrics. After all, Beyoncé hasn't publicly responded to any of Toni's accusations. She's never acknowledged them. So if Beyoncé herself won't engage, why should anyone else care? But the rumor mill kept spinning, and heated comments poured in on every social media platform. Some people accused Toni of spreading negativity within the black community just to get a few more views on her live streams. Others insisted that if she truly wanted to warn fans about a demonic influence, there had to be a more constructive way to do it than tearing people down. A lot of this also hinges on how people view Glorilla's reaction at the Grammys. Was her excitement simply the pure joy of one artist supporting another, or was she overdoing it for clout? Even those who aren't fans of Toni's approach stop to wonder if there's some unspoken rule about how celebrities should behave around someone as influential as Beyoncé. But in Glorilla's defense, she's a rising star who seems genuinely happy to see a legend breaking boundaries. Critics say Toni missed the bigger picture, that it was a moment of celebration, particularly significant because Beyoncé was claiming a spot in a genre not always welcoming to black artists. Tokyo Toni, however, isn't concerned with music industry milestones. Her focus remains fixed on what she calls the spiritual warfare behind the scenes. She's mentioned time and again that Beyoncé's so-called illusions are far too obvious to be ignored. From the symbolism in her shows to the themes in her music videos, Tokyo Toni believes a deeper plan is at work, luring young people into a dangerous form of hero worship. Whenever she brings religion into the mix, she doubles down on the idea that Beyoncé is leading everyone to hell, as she puts it. Critics point out that Tokyo Toni's moral outrage would be more believable if she didn't rely on crude insults and over-the-top tirades. Yet she seems comfortable in her approach, calling it a necessary wake-up call, no matter how abrasive it might seem. As the buzz grew louder, people began questioning whether Tokyo Toni's motives are purely spiritual or partly driven by her own desire for attention. Some argued she knows exactly how to stir up social media. With one outrageous claim, she gets new followers, more interview requests, and additional reasons to stay in the headlines. Still, a slice of the audience insists she's onto something, and that the rest of the world is just ignoring the signs. In this sense, Tokyo Toni's controversial attacks act like a magnet, drawing in both supporters who think she's unveiling hidden truths and critics who see her as the classic troll. None of that changes how Glorilla ended up dragged into a conflict she never asked for. She was simply having a good time, cheering for someone she admires. Instead, she found herself insulted online and forced to defend her honor against claims of being a brainwashed fangirl. For her part, Glorilla hasn't shown any signs of backing down either. After her initial quip about Tokyo Toni being an animal, she moved on with her life, continuing to release new music and enjoy her rising fame. If anything, this entire episode might have put Glorilla in a more sympathetic light. She's just another artist who got caught in someone else's feud. Meanwhile, Beyoncé continues her streak of groundbreaking performances, collecting awards, and extending her influence. Whether you believe Tokyo Toni's statements are baseless jabs or cryptic revelations, it's hard to deny the conversation she's sparked about how people idolize celebrities. Some fans admit they hold Beyoncé in a saint-like regard, rarely questioning her art or public image. Others see her success as purely earned through hard work, talent, and innovation. No sinister forces needed. No matter which side you land on, this saga prompts a bigger question. Where do we draw the line between admiration and worship? Is it fair to call out someone's enthusiastic celebration as demonic? Or is it a sign that we sometimes get swept up in the spotlight of our favorite stars, forgetting they're just human beings with talent? Tokyo Toni's approach, though brash and often offensive, does raise the subject of how we perceive fame. In the end, the Grammys should have been about celebrating major milestones in music. Instead, an internet feud overshadowed the event for a moment, with Tokyo Toni hurling fresh accusations and Glorilla firing off a swift response. Beyoncé, as usual, kept her silence. Whether this quiet stance is part of her mystique or just a way to avoid giving attention to critics is anyone's guess. But one thing's clear, when Tokyo Toni talks, people listen, even if it's just to shake their heads or roll their eyes. So, where does all this leave us? We're left to wonder whether Tokyo Toni will keep attacking Beyoncé every time she hits a new high point, or if Glorilla's comeback will be the last straw that ends the conversation. Fans, critics, and casual observers alike have all weighed in, flooding comment sections with arguments about faith, worship, and the power we give our favorite celebrities. In a world where controversy often drives clicks, Tokyo Toni may have mastered the art of staying relevant, even if her message comes draped in insults and conspiracy. Then again, it's worth asking, if she is sincere, will her warnings ever be taken seriously in the midst of all the chaos? The final takeaway might be simpler than it sounds. People can admire their icons without turning them into sacred figures, and questioning a celebrity's status doesn't have to mean hurling personal attacks. Still, the tension shows no sign of slowing down, especially with Beyoncé's star continuing to rise and Glorilla's own fame swiftly growing. Whether Tokyo Toni's words are a genuine plea or a ploy for attention, one thing is certain: this feud has given everyone a fresh look at how easily sparks can fly when passion, celebrity, and raw opinions collide.